Hornets Nest podcast. As always, Watford Fan Show on Love Sport after this brilliant news update.
On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is Love Sport News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7. It's believed the wife of an American diplomat suspected of causing a fatal crash was able to claim immunity because of a special deal between the UK and the US. 19-year-old Harry Dunn was killed after his motorbike collided with a car outside RAF Croton in Northamptonshire in August. It's understood an agreement to protect diplomats and their dependents based there has been in place since 1994. Usually only those in London are protected. Harry's father, Tim Dunn, wants justice.
It's appalling. You can't have this precedence where just because you have this immunity you can do whatever. It just basically saying you can do what you like and you'll be okay. That can't be right.
Essex police say they're not looking for anyone else in connection with a triple murder after arresting a 32-year-old man. 2 men were found dead at an address in Colchester last night. A third body was discovered inside a car outside the property. The Cardiff Half Marathon say a runner has died after taking part in the event. They immediately received treatment by the medical emergency team on the course but later died in hospital. In sport, Manchester City have lost further ground in the Premier League title race to Liverpool. They're 8 points behind after losing 2-0 at home to Wolves. Manchester United's dismal form continues after losing 1-0 at Newcastle. Elsewhere, Arsenal moved up to third with a 1-0 win over Bournemouth, and Chelsea thrashed Southampton 4-1. And Rangers are the new leaders of the Scottish Premiership after thrashing Hamilton 5-0. Jermaine Defoe scored a hat-trick and manager Steven Gerrard was delighted with his striker.
We knew we'd bring a team here, get a lot of men behind the ball and set us a challenge to break that down. But with players like Jermaine, with how sharp he is and his clever movements, it was only going to be a matter of time. But the early goal really helped us today.
His side took advantage of a shock 2-0 defeat for Celtic at Livingston. From That's the Latest, I'm Tanya Snuggs.
Love Sport Radio. On digital radio, online, mobile and smart speaker. This is the Watford Fans Show.
Good evening. You are listening to Love Sport. I am Matt Beadle, and this is the Watford Fan Show. As always, with Andy Lewis from the Hornets Nest podcast. Andy, how is one?
I'm well, thank you, Matt.
Good. I'm glad you're well because it's not a win, but it's a point, and a point in the grand scheme of things is massive.
You might as well we should have done at the start of the season, you just recording the intro of just joined by Andy Lewis, another winless weekend for Watford, and just taken the first 5 minutes of the show like just chilling out, because we could have just played that on repeat for the last 8 weeks.
That's a very good point you make. To the big thing about today, and I said this before I came on air, was that I didn't want to start on any kind of negative, because I kind of feel like that's been the theme of the show since the season began.
For a while, yeah.
So, for a long time. Actually, not even since the season began. Since the back end of last season, of course. But yes, a goalless draw. Now, you're not going to like this, and I thought about this before I came on air. You're not going to like it. Okay. However, I remember watching an interview with Big Sam Allardyce towards the back end of last season, and he was just talking about his time at Crystal Palace and Sunderland, and they were asking him about how he rejuvenated those clubs when he went in, how he kept them up. And the key thing he said was clean sheets. Straight off the bat, I went in and I honed the defence and I honed the goalkeeper because we needed to keep clean sheets. Once you start keeping those clean sheets, you can then start nicking 1-0 wins. You can then start nicking 2-0 wins. So that clean sheet, perhaps, is bigger than we think.
And that's why I actually sort of came out of the game yesterday feeling, I wouldn't say positive, because we're still rock bottom, still winless, of course. And for me, yesterday was a must-win game. But this is probably going to sound really strange. I felt better coming out of a 0-0 than I would say if it was 1-1 or 2-2 because of that clean sheet. We should be sitting here talking about a 2-3-0 win for Watford. We had 3 glorious chances to score yesterday. So, 1 week we're blaming the defence. Now this week we're blaming the strikers. But it is a clean sheet. And I I get the negativity surrounding it. I'm a bit annoyed that there were a few boos at the end of the game, but I completely understand it because no one wants to be rock bottom of the table and, drawing against Sheffield United. With all respect to them, they were very well organised, but from what we've seen, this Watford side can produce. That is a game that we should be winning, especially in our position. We needed 3 points yesterday, but we saw some sort of defensive organisation, and that for me was at least a step in the right direction. So it wasn't 3 points. Disappointed, yes. Still frustrated, of course, but it's a starting point. Now we've just got to hope that Tottenham's bleak run of form continues for 2 weeks after the international break and hopefully take advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get onto the chances, or the missed chances, I should say, that you mentioned there. But that defensive organisation, stability maybe that you've got, he changed things up. So Beadle came back into the side.
Beadle was he was a big favourite of Kike during Kike's first season in 15-16, and I really liked him in that first season. It was under Mazzari. He had a fantastic game against Manchester United at home, and then got a nasty injury. I forget what happened, but never really was able to come back into the side. And this year, because obviously we haven't boosted the defence as such over the summer, and because it's been so shambolic, there needed to be a shake-up. And I think Kike's team selection yesterday raised a few eyebrows, but for me it was a good thing because we needed something different. Obviously, the same formula clearly hasn't been working in recent weeks, and I like the fact that you changed it. I like the fact that we went three central defenders at the back in Beadle, Cabra, and Cathcart, and then having Janmaat and Holebas as wing-backs. I really liked that. It was different, and actually, what we saw yesterday, there were little moments that Sheffield United managed to break through, get behind us in the first half, but we saw actual communication going on, which I haven't left a game this season thus far thinking, those guys are all communicating, talking to one another. There was one moment yesterday in the first half, I forget who lost the ball, it might have been Holebas, and it went out for a corner, and Kabasele absolutely ripped into everyone in the defence. And Kabasele was man of the match yesterday, and deservedly so. He was fantastic. And that's what we want to see. We want to see that leadership. We've spoken about in the show previously. We've been missing Troy, not necessarily for his technical ability, but for his leadership and what he brings onto the pitch. And yesterday I saw that in Kabasele, and that really pleased me that someone was willing to just, I'm going to try and keep it polite, but go at them and just shout at his own teammates because they need to hear it. And that's what really pleased me yesterday. So yes, we should be sitting here talking about a win, but we've conceded. I'm sitting here in front of the Premier League table. We've got a minus 16 goal difference already this season after 8 games, and to come out a game with a clean sheet first since February, and to be talking about a central defender being man of the match, I don't think Sheffield United even had a sort of meaningful shot on target really, is actually progress for me.
Yeah, 19 Premier League games, I think, without a clean sheet. So that's something that you stopped. You stopped the rot. And just to go back to what you were saying about Troy Deeney, you're bang on. Tear into them. There's nothing wrong with that. When you're part of a football club as well and part of a football team, you look up to that. And I know that the role of the captain has somewhat changed in recent seasons, but you still need that leader. And in a kind of sadistic kind of way, sometimes when you've messed up, you kind of want someone to tear into you because it almost gives you the fuel, the fire to kind of go back and go, I'm going to prove you wrong. Or, right, I need to sort myself out. Nothing wrong with that. Exactly.
And there's been occasions this season where I think players, where we haven't had that on the pitch, they can kind of get away with it. Like, I mean, if Capu has a bad day, Capu continues to have a bad day. For example, obviously, he didn't play yesterday. Decore yesterday was, probably his worst ever performance in a Watford shirt. And we needed that someone. Okay, Kabasele did it to the defence, but we also, in recent weeks, we need that someone on the pitch to just shout at them, just tell them to get themselves in the game. And I think too many players in recent weeks have sort of been, I guess, taking liberties maybe and just thinking they can just get away with it almost. And that's kind of what it feels like from the stands, especially that 8-0 drubbing at Manchester City. That was obviously completely unacceptable. But it was good to see some of that yesterday, and I just hope that continues and that clean sheet gives this squad some much needed confidence.
And good to see management like you referred to as well, because I think it's very easy for a manager to come in and not sit back but go, okay, I'm not going to change too much and I'm going to leave it as it is, and then try and get a different reaction from those players. A bit like what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did when he first went into Manchester United. Same players, pretty much the same setup, but just tweaked a few bits and pieces. What Kike is doing is changing it. He's being a manager. We don't see enough of that nowadays. Like you said, he changed the formation, he changed the system. And if it doesn't work straight away like that, so be it. It might take these players a little bit of time to adapt to what he wants them to do. But at least that's showing the fact that he's gone on the training ground, he's looked at previous games and gone, this doesn't work. I need to change it.
And the perfect example of that is yesterday that Craig Dawson was dropped down to the bench, and deservedly so, because in recent games he's not been the player that we expected him to be when we signed him from West Brom. He had a good 90 minutes against Arsenal, but apart from that he's been underwhelming. Yesterday he was dropped, deservedly so, and obviously Prodal came in, and Prodal went off injured. And in fairness to Dawson, he came on and he was actually pretty good. Almost nicked the winner at the end as well. What disappointed me yesterday was there was a fan behind me and a couple of murmurs here and there of when Prodal went off and Dawson came on. A couple of boos from the crowd, which I hope weren't aimed at the substitute, aimed at Dawson more so. The referee not allowing Dawson to come on in time. So we had to play with 10 men. I really, really hope.
I think you're looking at the bright side of things there.
I think I am. I would be really disappointed if that was the case. And my question to them would be, would you have celebrated if Dawson had scored that header in the final minute? So booing our own players will get us absolutely nowhere, and we will stay rock bottom of the table if that kind of atmosphere continues at Vicarage Road. We need positivity. This squad needs confidence, and that's the only way we're going to stay in this division.
Yep, wholeheartedly agree with you on that one. You have mentioned the chance where he should have scored, didn't get the required contact. I know a lot of people have said Dean Henderson has redeemed himself after last week. It was a save that he should have made because Dawson didn't quite get the connection. However, Andre Gray and Danny Welbeck should have put Watford at least 2-0 up before then.
Absolutely, yeah. That miss from Andre will haunt him, I think, for a very long time. This is the second time in 8 games that we're talking about a Watford player missing from just a matter of yards away from goal. Obviously, Will Hughes against West Ham missed from even closer than Andre Gray yesterday, and I just don't get it. I think the problem watching it back is Andre's sort of overrun it, and the ball's, if I can put up any sort of defence for Andre, the ball is slightly behind him and he's had to pull his leg back and he's scooped it over the bar. If that's the case, just hold your run back. You know, Pereira had tons of space. Andre had the whole penalty area basically to play with. Just hold your run slightly to make sure you're onside, and then you can run onto the ball and use your momentum to go onto the ball, and it's a simple tap in. Whereas if you overrun it, which is what Andre did, suddenly you're on the back foot and your weight's all in front of the ball, and you're having to sort of twist your body in an unnatural way and try and scoop it into the net. And sadly for us, obviously, he did the latter and he just got his body shape wrong. And then with Welbeck in the second half, did well to pinch the ball on the halfway line, threw on goal. And I think any striker, one-on-one should be scoring past the keeper. You're in total control of it. I think the problem with one-on-ones for some strikers, we saw it with Andre, was it last season? It must have been, sort of back end of 17-18, start of last season. If ever he went through one-on-one, he wouldn't score. Because, I apologise, it was Deulofeu who had that issue, being unfair on Andre there. But almost like strikers have too much time to think about it. We see strikers, classic poachers, and work on instinct and get tons of goals per season. But when they're given some sort of time to think about what they're going to do with it, sometimes they fluff it. And I think that might have been what happened yesterday. I always learned, I was a striker when I was younger, obviously didn't make it. But if I go through on goal, I make my decision then and I stick to it. I don't change it at all once I'm through, and I stick to that plan of which corner I'm going for. Am I taking it around the keeper, etc. I think Welbeck might have changed his mind halfway through. I think he saw Dean Henderson coming out, think, no, I can't take this round him. And it was, again, actually quite a comfortable save for Henderson, because it wasn't in the corner. It was at quite a nice height for him as well. So really, really disappointing when the one week our defence does their job, the strikers don't do theirs. And it wasn't like they were sort of difficult chances to stick away either. They were really gilt-edged chances that we should have buried. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the Welbeck chance as well is from a player who hasn't scored a Premier League goal since August 2018 for Arsenal. Difficult, maybe a bit of ring rust there, but what he did show was a real desire to win the ball back. And actually it was quite funny because he could have squared it to Andre Gray, and you saw him. Andre Gray was quite angry, and you saw Danny Welbeck go, "No, Andre, leave it." And to be fair, why should he have squared it to him after the chance from earlier?
Well, exactly, yeah.
And to counteract the point as well, I think that you're right in terms of the fact that the ball was behind him, but we could have that argument, I think, if we're looking at a League One, a League Two, a non-league player. The fact you're a Premier League player, he should still have the ability, I think, Andre Gray, to score that goal.
He had time for a touch as well.
Yeah.
He had time to just get it off, let it bounce onto his shin, and then he's still got time, even if it's a dodgy bounce, to tap it into the net. Henderson's on the floor at this point. He's still had time to do that, and yeah, I mean, it's in the past, so there's no point sort of dwelling on it. I'm just glad that it sort of didn't come back to bite us in the backside.
No, it is indeed in the past. What it does mean is that Watford are currently on the longest winless run to the start of a Premier League season.
Excellent.
Since 2006-07. And we all know who was in the Watford squad in 2006-07, a certain Mr. Richard Lee. Take that as you wish. Watford Fan Show on Love Sport.
Giving your team the coverage they deserve. Love Sport Radio.
I'm not a snob. I just don't want to be in the same car as my chauffeur.
Listen to Love Sport Radio on your smartphone today. Simply download the free Love Sport app from the App Store or Google Play. Tap the play button and you'll be able to listen to your favourite station. Anytime, anywhere. Love Sport Radio, the station giving fans a voice.
You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage. You're in leakage. You're in leakage, you're in leakage.
Tenna men. Pants and pads.
You're
discreet. Masculine.
You're right.
Secure absorption zone. Buy online or in shops.
You're in.
Tenna men. Keep control.
You're in.
No.
I'm Leslie from North Essex. I couldn't believe that after 5 minutes I'd saved over £900 on my energy bills. When my car insurance was then due for renewal, I went back to a spokesman said and reduced my premium by over £500. I thought that my home insurance was expensive. When I shopped around on a spokesman said, I saved a staggering £1,100. I've saved £2,500. I cannot believe it was that easy.
A spokesmansaid.com, fighting for you, saving you money.
If you see somebody showing any of the signs of a stroke, you don't have to think about it, you just dial 999. Use the FAST test. F. Face. Has their face fallen on one side? Can they smile? A. Arms. Can they raise both arms and keep them there? S. Speech. Is their speech slurred? T. Time. Time to call 999 if you see any one of these signs. Act fast, make the call, dial 999.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes. This is Love Sport.
This is Love Sport. It's the Watford Fan Show on Love Sport, no less. Me, Matt Beadle, here with Andy Lewis from the Hornets Nest podcast. It is 18 minutes past 7, and I'm delighted that on the phone right now, it's friend of the show, Jacob Coleshaw, founder and host of the WD18 Watford Fan Channel. Jacob, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Cheers.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm not feeling too bad after yesterday. I'm kind of sharing the same feelings as Andy. Don't want to be too positive, but at the same time, it is a clean sheet and a bit better than what we've seen previously.
Hi there, Jacob. Andy here. Hope you're enjoying uni, mate. So, what did you make of the lineup yesterday? I saw some sort of differing opinions on Twitter when the team news was announced. What was your initial reaction to it?
Well, my initial...
Oh, we appear to have lost Jacob. So I'm going to put that to you, Andy. Your reaction. I mean, I know we've discussed it slightly, but in terms of when we look at the attack, to be fair, the fact that Welbeck is now in and Ismail Assar came off the bench as well. Danny Welbeck, do you think this is a player that's going to get back to where he was for Arsenal? Is that what the hope is for Watford?
I seriously hope so, of course, but I think he'll only do that if he plays alongside someone up front. And I think the person that will suit him more is Troy Deeney, because Deeney will hold up play better than Andre. He'll bring Welbeck in more so, and I think Andre can be quite physical, but I don't think he and Welbeck quite match up as a pair. We know how well Deeney can work in a two with that hold-up play and linking not just the other striker but the midfield as well and bringing others in. So I think if Welbeck is going to reach his previous standard, then it's probably going to be with Troy when he comes back.
Absolutely, Jacob. I believe you are back on. I think it was a bit of snake bite seeping into the phone lines there, mate. But Andy's question to you, just about the starting lineup. We've discussed it at length already on the show, but an interesting team selection from Kike.
Yeah, it was an interesting team selection. Sorry about that, guys. I was again surprised by the lineup by Kike. We've seen a different one each time he's been returned to the club. I actually like the fact he went a bit more defensive this week and went for a 5 at the back, and it was negative. It's the stats are all that the fact that Sheffield United, I think, had 60% of the possession. We played on the counter. We looked to play on the counter, and as Andy mentioned, we had 3 of the best chances. So in a way, it did work. We kept the clean sheet, and we should have really won the game 2 or 3-0. I mean, Gray, Welbeck in the second half, Craig Dawson should have scored. We should be coming away with 3 points, but we didn't. But initially, the lineup, I thought, it was a surprising team, as always with Kike. We haven't actually seen a consistent team, unlike Javi, who we were used to seeing the 4-4-2. We knew who was playing on the wings, Pereira, Hughes, the core Kapoor in the middle every single week. But I still feel like Kike's just trying to find his best team at the moment. So in answer to your question, I was surprised when the lineup was announced, but I can understand Kike's thought process behind it.
Yeah, absolutely, Jacob. Now, it was just a point yesterday when Watford desperately needed 3, and as it stands, Watford are already 4 points adrift from Southampton in 17th place. Obviously, all Watford fans are concerned, but have you now reached the stage where you're looking out for other teams' results? You know, Newcastle and Wolves won today, Brighton and Aston Villa won this weekend. Has it already reached that stage for you?
I believe we've lost Jacob again. I tell you what, these uni boys.
He must be clubbing.
I think that's what he's doing. He's at a toga party. That's what he's doing. But the results, the results are interesting. I mean, for yourself, you just mentioned Everton now in. I mean, I don't know whether we can call it the relegation zone. I always like to think that maybe once a third of the season is down, we can then call it. We can get those little dotted lines. But I think it's not the relegation zone just yet. But Everton, if we were to call it a relegation zone, are in the bottom 3.
Well, that's great, isn't it? If Watford go down and pull Everton down and Marco Silva with us, a sweet closure to the whole saga. I agree. I think it's probably maybe a little bit too early, but Watford fans are still going to look at it and say, "Oh, we are still bottom." Blah blah. But you look at Wolves. Wolves have just won their last 2 Premier League games, and suddenly they've gone from second from bottom up to they're not even on my page because they're so high up in 11th. But that's how still close it is.
Yeah.
A couple of good results, maybe a point at Spurs, and 3 points against Bournemouth, and suddenly we're out of the relegation zone. So whilst at the moment it does all look doom and gloom, and yes, I am looking at other teams' results. I'd be lying if I said no. We were watching the Newcastle versus United game just before we came on air, and I wanted Manchester United to equalise. I didn't want Newcastle to win that game because that's one team that was predicted to struggle before the season started, getting I would say unlikely 3 points. Is it unlikely 3 points against Manchester United nowadays?
It's difficult to say,
I'm
isn't
not
it?
sure this season, in all fairness, but a game that they certainly weren't favourites to get 3 points from, and they've picked them up. Same with Brighton against Spurs yesterday, especially Wolves against Man City. But in fairness, I think Wolves are a lot better than the other sides that were predicted to be down there anyway. So I think this Watford side, we know we have a squad capable of finishing in the mid-region of the Premier League. We know that. We did it last season, and we just added 2-3 players. It's pretty much the same squad. But I think our problem at the moment, whilst all these teams are getting results around us, it's not going to help me looking at those teams. The only team that can get Watford out of this struggle is Watford. And there's still plenty of football to play. There's 30 games left. And if Watford want to get out of there, we've got to stop worrying about Manchester United at St James's Park and Manchester City losing at home. It's all on Watford. It's kind of my own fault for sort of for looking at these scores and thinking, oh, great, Brighton have won, fantastic. Now we definitely need to win, because that just puts pressure on myself and on the team, and that just creates that negative atmosphere that we don't want. 30 games to go, plenty of time. This Watford squad does have enough, but I think genuinely, I don't think it's down to skill. I think it's down to confidence with this team.
I agree wholeheartedly. Again, Jacob, I believe you're back on the line. You got one more chance, buddy. I tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it's very reminiscent of Watford's start of the season, this line.
Faulty and pathetic.
Well, Jacob, I guess my point to you now, my question to you would be, we were speaking to some Norwich fans earlier, and they were weighing up whether they take the 3-2 victory over Manchester City, an emphatic night at Carrow Road, and then they look at the game yesterday, a relegation rival, Aston Villa, that they get trounced 5-1 at home. Would they swap getting trounced by Manchester City at Carrow Road to then beat a relegation rival? And their response, quite interestingly, was that for the love of football, they probably wouldn't. So on one hand, obviously you want to beat these relegation rivals, 6 pointers in a sense, but I guess it depends what you're in football for, really. If you want the business end of football and you just want to remain a Premier League club and finish, 17th every season, you take beating your relegation rivals. But if you want the longer lasting memories, you probably take beating one of the top 6.
Yeah, I actually disagree with that. I'd prefer to be a team who was around Watford, so a relegation candidate in the bottom half, only because not only are we picking up points against rivals, but we're also damaging their chances of staying up. Getting the results, we've seen them before at Vicarage Road. We've beaten Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs. Great days, but the bigger wins for Watford are beating teams in and around them. I remember last season when we were going for 7th spot, beating teams who were in and around us, who were fighting for that 7th Europa League spot was vital. And that's why it kind of created a mini league between the rest of the 14 and the top 6. So I think for me, I'd prefer to be beating teams like Aston Villa, Sheffield United yesterday at home, Norwich, because not only is it great for Watford, but it also damages the chance of the other teams who are in and around us. So although it's great for the fans to have games at home and the games at Vicarage Road, which you've seen before, where we beat big teams, the more important for Watford fans, and particularly any side outside the top 6, is beating the teams in and around them.
I'd actually disagree with that. I think firstly, I think it'd be good for Watford to only concede 2 to Manchester City. That would be a huge plus. But also, I think personally, football is about those memories, and we've been in the Premier League now consistently for our 5th consecutive season this year since promotion. And we don't really remember the games that we won against teams like West Brom or Everton, teams that are sort of in and around us. We don't really remember those games. What we do remember is the 3-0 against Liverpool. We remember the 2-1 away at Arsenal, the 4-1 against Chelsea. And I don't know, in 10 years' time, we'll look back on our time in the Premier League, say if we do go down and we reminisce about these years in the top flight. We won't be looking at those games against Brighton, against Newcastle. We will be looking at those games against Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, etc. The win against Spurs, for example, we're probably not going to be able to add Manchester City to that list, in fairness. But I just think, sort of emotionally, football-wise, you look back with fondness at those sort of games. So it's interesting that a differing opinion there. Maybe Jacob, your opinion might be different if Watford were actually higher up the table and not in and around the relegation zone. Yeah, so that's quite an interesting one. I just wanted to ask you, Jacob, where is the win coming from for Watford? Because obviously Spurs in 2 weeks' time, they've got the international break to sort of recoup, and then a very tricky test at home to Bournemouth.
I think Bournemouth has to be a must-win for us, Andy. And I think we need to be picking up points before the next international break. Otherwise, personally, I think our fate could be decided before then. I think we've got some winnable games before Christmas. I know we've got to play Norwich, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, teams who are in the bottom half, and we need to be picking up points now because for our first 4 games of the season, now we look back on it, we're absolutely crucial. Playing Brighton, Newcastle, these are teams who are going to be down there. And I know I heard you before the line cut talking about Newcastle and us focusing on other results. And I don't want to be in that situation. I want our destiny to be in our hands. And I think when we start to do that, then something's going horribly wrong this season. So there are winnable games coming up. I think probably potentially our next we should obviously be going into the Tottenham game looking to get something out of it. It's going to be difficult. They're going to be looking to get back to winning ways. Obviously, they've had a poor week or so, but I think Bournemouth at home we have to be targeting a win there. And it'll be interesting to see whether Kike sets up like he did yesterday against Sheffield United, really defensive, and it was reminiscent actually of our season under him. I remember the Swansea game at home where we were really compact defensively. Everton away, defensively solid, but we don't have the likes of Odion Igalo up front to bang them in. And potentially, if 2015-16 Igalo's up front yesterday, then we come away with all 3 points. So defensively, we looked better yesterday. If we can improve on that, I'm sure the wins will come. But I think the next winnable game really is Bournemouth at home.
Yeah, fair play. You mentioned the international break as well there, Jacob. You're going to stay on the line with us because we're going to be talking about that next on the Watford Fan Show on Love Sport.
Love Sport.
Join Richard Lee and myself, Patrick Christys, tomorrow morning for Love Sport Breakfast from 6:30. We'll have the fallout from the Man United, Newcastle and Arsenal Bournemouth clashes, as well as the biggest stories from yesterday's action in the Football and Rugby World Cup. Listen on digital radio, online and on your mobile. You can also watch the show live on Love Sport Radio's YouTube channel.
Love Sport Breakfast with Richard Lee and Patrick Christys.
You all right, mate? Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it, sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Whoa! Look how much saturated fat is in these chocolate biscuits. It's surprising how much is in our food and drinks. For us kids, eating too much saturated fat can lead to harmful fat building up inside, which we can't see, increasing the risk of heart disease or stroke when we get older. So be food smart. Download the free Change for Life food scanner app and start making healthier choices today.
There are many things a mother can pass on to her baby. Her smile, her eye colour, and her immunity to whooping cough. Whooping cough is a very dangerous illness for young babies, and at the moment it's spreading fast. A simple vaccination during your pregnancy can help to protect your baby in their first weeks. Please speak to your GP, nurse, or healthcare professional and pass on your immunity.
Have you had enough of extortionate energy bills? A spokesman said could help you find the cheapest energy deals on the market. Don't take our word for it. There's hundreds of spokesman said customers who've saved big. Brian from Derbyshire saved £400 on his energy bills, and Tony from Northampton saved a massive £2,800 on his gas and electric. A spokesmansaid.com, the leading price comparison site where you can switch to the cheapest energy tariffs on the market in just minutes.
Thespokesmansaid.com, fighting for you, saving you money.
This is Love Sport.
This is the Watford Fan Show on Love Sport. Me, Matt Beadle, here with Andy Lewis from the Hornets Nest, as always. And we're joined on the phone by Jacob Colshaw as well, founder and host of the WD18 Watford Fan Channel. Now, we are going to look, Andy, ahead. It's obviously international break. Sometimes you wish that maybe if you're building a bit of momentum that your club goes straight into it. Sometimes you need the break. In Watford's case, I don't really know which one it is. But
I just wish there was no football every week, Matt. It's the end of season.
We just bypassed it. Yeah, it's all right. Let's move on. It is the international break, and players are, as always, on international duty.
Yes, absolutely. So I myself am taking an international break next weekend. I'm off to Budapest. That's why I will not be on the show next week, Matt.
Lovely, Buda. A lovely spot, Budla.
Yeah. What have you been before? Presumably?
I have been before. Yeah,
what
do you recommend?
What do you recommend doing?
Well, I mean, you go to Budapest, you enjoy the cuisine for one, bit of goulash, lovely stuff.
Excellent.
And it's difficult really. I would just say just enjoy the sights. There's a lovely marine area. You go there, and also something people don't tend to know: Budapest is split into two parts: Buda and Pest.
Yeah, there we go. I actually knew that.
I found out from a cab driver while I was there. We digress.
Excellent. Well, I say that I was on my trip to Budapest. I was planning to go to the Hungary versus Azerbaijan Euro 2020 qualifier, only to find out that it's now being played behind closed doors because of some offensive chanting from the Hungarian fans in their game against Slovakia.
Lovely.
So that's their punishment. But there's plenty of other football going on, Jacob, involving Watford players. First up, defender Craig Cathcart has been called up to Northern Ireland for their Euro 20 qualifier against the Netherlands and their friendly against the Czech Republic. He's not had, and none of Watford defenders have had a greatest start to the season. Were you surprised by his inclusion in the Northern Ireland squad?
Well, I think Craig has actually been consistently been called up to the Northern Ireland squad, so I'm not really surprised that he has been. I don't think he's been fantastic this season by any stretch, and to be honest, none of the Watford defenders have really been brilliant. But no, I think he's been consistently called up to the Northern Ireland squad, so I'm not surprised that he's been called up, but I don't know whether they're spoilt for choice of defenders. I think that says it all really if Craig Cathcart's getting called up.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one man who hasn't really featured so much for Watford since his record move over the summer, Ismail Assar, who's been called up to the Senegal squad. Obviously, they're runners-up in AFCON earlier this year against Algeria. He's been called up to their AFCON 2021 qualifying warm-up match against none other than Brazil. So perhaps he'll come up against former Watford player Richarlison, and they can trade stories about Watford managers, etc. Would you be sort of frustrated if he got 90 minutes there and hasn't had 90 minutes yet for Watford?
Yeah, I'm frustrated that Ismail Assar hasn't actually featured a lot more for Watford, and to be fair, the circumstances hasn't helped. Obviously, he came in with Javi being the head coach, and you just don't know really whether he would have played, because I think the thing is with Watford's system, and as you know, Andy, is that the head coach doesn't have any control over the transfers. So if the manager doesn't fancy him, then there's not a lot he can really do. And it hasn't helped that Kike has come in for him because it's a new coach. We don't know if he actually fancies him. And definitely the setup that we played yesterday means Sarr has to be on the bench because he's a winger. We play with two up top, a narrow midfield and two wing backs. So it doesn't really actually give him an opportunity unless we played him as a striker. But Kike's always going to pick Andre Graham and Danny Welbeck over him, and even Gerard Deulofeu can play as a striker, as we saw under Javi. But if I was Ismail Assar, I'd feel frustrated. Potentially, it might be early days, but he might be potentially regretting the fact he's moved over from Rennes, because he hasn't actually had a lot of game time now. His pre-season was disrupted because of the move he made to Watford. But I think he'd be expecting a lot more game time than he's got so far. But circumstances have meant that he can't do that. He looked okay against Wolves and made a big impact actually against Arsenal. I thought he looked electric actually going forward very, very quick. Didn't have a massive impact yesterday, but I think he'll feel frustrated that he hasn't been given more game time as of yet. Yeah,
you mentioned that he may well regret. Well, we don't want any Watford player to ever regret their move to Watford, but purely based on game time. But I don't think Rennes has the attraction of the Harry Potter world like Watford does, so there is that going for him. One player who's sort of split opinion so far this season is Roberto Pereira. Now, I thought he was actually pretty good yesterday. Obviously set up what should have been an assist for Andre Gray in the first half. He's been called up for Argentina's squad for their friendlies against Germany and Ecuador. Now, he has split opinions. Like much of the Watford squad already this season, he has blown sort of hot and cold, mostly cold. What were your thoughts about him getting called up? Because I saw when the tweet went out, there were obviously a few negative comments underneath the news. People just asking, a team that includes Messi calling up someone who's currently sitting rock bottom of the Premier League. What were your thoughts?
Well, again, it's similar to Craig Cathcart. Roberto Pereira's featured consistently for Argentina, well in the squad anyway. He's featured off the bench, and they've got a pretty big squad in there. They're not exactly... they've got a lot of talent going forward, put it that way, as you mentioned, Lionel Messi, etc. Sergio Aguero, Higuain. Roberto Pereira has actually featured consistently for Argentina, off the bench anyway. This season, I actually think Roberto Pereira's been one of our best players. Yesterday, he looked good. And alongside Christian Kabasele, I thought it was between those two for man of the match for me. He was our one creative spark going forward. He made the most ball recoveries on the pitch. He won the ball back the most times, 8 times in total. And he looked like our one threat going forward. And you thought any time we were going to go forward and create something, it was going to be through Roberto Pereira. I thought it was good the way Kike utilised him in an attacking midfield role rather than from the left. Javi really did like playing him on the left-hand side, cutting him onto his right. But I thought he looked good in the middle. So, I think Roberto Pereira's probably been one of our better players this season. Surprised to see him call up the Argentina squad? No, not really, because the manager seems to like him. He's been doing it pretty. He's been called up consistently over the last few months. So I'm not surprised by that. And just in general, I think he's been pretty good for Watford this season.
He also was the only man to read that inch-perfect ball from Tom Cleverley, by the way, which was purposefully meant for Roberto Pereira as well. But what you say there, Jacob, is interesting because, Andy's come at it from one angle and said, he's received a bit of stick, whereas this is typical football fans, right? You turn around and gone, do you know what? I think he's been one of our better players this season.
Well, that's the thing. With Roberto Pereira, I've been a big critic of him, where he kind of blows hot and cold. I think he looked good when he came on against Arsenal, actually. He had a point to prove, I think, with Kike. And then yesterday, I thought playing him in a central role actually was good. He was tracking back. He was covering a lot of ground, and that was probably one big criticism under Javi and with Pereira, that he was a bit lazy. He didn't really like to get his foot in. But I thought actually yesterday he did cover a lot of ground. He put a big shift in. And when you're not doing very well at the bottom of the table, you need players to put in a shift. And the likes of Cabasele, I thought Pereira did put in a shift yesterday. Danny Welbeck as well. They were fighting for the cause. And I think that's the main thing at the moment. And I've been critical of Pereira before for that. But I thought he was good yesterday.
Yeah, I actually thought when he came in, it was 2016, 17. It was a Mazzari season, wasn't it? I thought he was coming in to be that player in behind the attackers in that attacking midfield role, and like you say with Silva, with Javi, he was utilised as a winger, and maybe Kike's sort of getting him back to what he's best at. And like you say yesterday, I thought he was excellent, really putting the Sheffield United defence under a bit of pressure, giving them something to think about. So hopefully he can go away for these friendly matches, gain a little bit more confidence in his ability, because he is a fantastic player and a real asset to Watford on his day. But we just don't see it often enough. So hopefully he can come back for the game against Spurs and sort of set the new stadium on fire, so to speak. Now, another player who's sort of was consistent in the squad last season, Adi Mariappa. He's been called up to Jamaica's squad for their 2 games against Aruba in the CONCACAF Nations League. Adi Mariappa, do you think, were you surprised to see Prodal put in ahead of Mariappa yesterday, given how well Mariappa was sort of back in the last season?
I wasn't surprised to see Prodal feature. I think if you're Adi Mariappa, you think yourself, am I actually going to get a chance under Kike? Sebastian Prodal hasn't played a game in over a year, I don't think. He hasn't had a lot of game time playing with the under-23s, getting his fitness back up. And I think that sends a clear message to Mariappa about how Kike views him and views him in the squad. He was utilised under Javi, but I just don't think Kike rates him particularly. And I think with the way the defence has been and the way we've been changing formations, the 3-5-2, the 4-4-2, the 4-2-3-1, the defence has been rotating pretty often, and Mariappa hasn't really got a look in under Kike. So I think he'll feel that his time at Watford may be coming to an end if Kike stays for his contract length. But yeah, I think he could potentially feel a little bit disappointed that he hasn't been given more of a look in than he has already. But no, I think Mariappa, I wouldn't play him. I would play Prodal. I thought Prodal and Cabasele looked very solid before Prodal obviously got injured and Craig Dawson came on. I thought Dawson, actually, I know he gets a lot of criticism, but he looked solid when they came in. And I heard you earlier, Andy, talking about the fans who potentially did boo him, and I think that's absolutely out of order. And if any fan does that, they shouldn't be going back to the Quidro, really. You're there to get behind the players. So, yeah, I think that wasn't good at all. But I think, yeah, just going back to Adi Mariappa, I think he'll feel disappointed that he hasn't got more of a look in under Kike.
And just finally, Jacob, 2 players who have been called up to their under-21 squads for their UEFA under-21s championships matches. Domingos Quina for Portugal against Netherlands, and Pontus Dahlberg for Sweden under-21s for their games against Iceland and Luxembourg. Now, Dahlberg is sort of 4th in line for the keeper's spot. But one player I've actually becoming a little bit frustrated that we're not seeing enough of is Domingos Quina. Is there any sort of explanation why he's not been making the bench for Kike?
Not that I've heard, Andy, and I don't know whether it's fitness, if he's injured. We just haven't really been told by the club, actually. I know when Jose Holebas got left out at Newcastle, it was because of a tactical reason. We get told about certain players and others we don't get told a lot about. So I'm not too sure about that. When I would like to see more of Domingos Quina, I think he brings a lot more creativity to that midfield. And the way Decore played yesterday, there's no reason that Quina shouldn't be coming in for Tottenham, really. Because Decore, I think there was 15 misplaced passes by him. 43 completed, and he missed 15 passes. So I think it was absolutely awful yesterday. So I think there's a strong argument that Domingos Quina should come in and get a go. And also, just before I go, I think another player that I'm feeling frustrated for is Daniel Bachmann. Now, I think Foster, I'm a massive fan of Ben Foster. I thought his distribution was poor yesterday. And I'm not saying get Foster out and bring Daniel Bachmann in, but he has to be on the bench more often. He has to be getting more game time in the cup competitions. He's had a fantastic attitude since he's come to Watford, being third choice goalkeeper. And I think he thought this season he'd get more of a look in it. It hasn't been that way because obviously Aurelio Gomez got his contract extension. And I feel sorry for him. So two players that are understandably frustrated because they're two young players, two young prospects for Watford, and they're not getting a lot of game time. So they can understandably feel a bit frustrated. I'd like to see Quina play against Spurs.
It's a very good point. Well made there, Jacob. It's been a pleasure having you on the line, boss.
Thank you very much, guys.
I think it's time you get yourself down to Chicago's. They've got an offer on Green Monsters tonight, mate, so you're buzzing.
Thanks very much, guys. See you later.
Cheers, buddy. That was Jacob Coleshaw, founder and host of the WD18 Watford Fan Channel. This is the Watford Fan Show on Love Sport. Next, we are going to be looking ahead to the Spurs clash and whether they will be the victims of Watford's first win in the Premier League this season.
I believe in reincarnation. I've left everything in my will to me.
Giving your team a voice. Love Sport Radio.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive grizzly bear sitting on you. You sure you're okay?
Well, now that you mention it, sometimes we say we're fine when we're not. But with 1 in 4 experiencing a mental health problem, if your mate says he's fine, he might not be. Be in your mate's corner and ask twice. Time to change.
If you're in business, I bet you hate wasting money. We Do Taxi Tops can help you achieve minimum wastage on your advertising costs and maximum exposure. Our revolutionary taxi tops can target your potential customers in the right place at the right time, so your message has the greatest potential for making an impact. We Do Taxi Tops. Visit WEDOOH.com. We Do. The smarter, quicker way of advertising in London, supporting London businesses of all sizes.
Oh, it's okay. Let's face it, when your kids are ill, you'd do anything to help them feel better. But remember, antibiotics aren't always needed. You might not realise it, but taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Help keep your family well. Always take your doctor's advice on antibiotics. Search NHS antibiotics. All better.
Before you set off on a long journey, remember to check your vehicle. Are your tyres correctly inflated? And are the treads deep enough? Have you got enough fuel? Is your oil level right? Checking your vehicle doesn't take long, but can prevent a breakdown or accident. And save you money. So, before you set off on a long journey, check your tyres, fuel and oil. Highways England, connecting the country.
Love Sport.
This is the Watford Fan Show on Love Sport. I am Matt Beadle, joined by Andy Lewis from the Hornets Nest, as always. Now, there is an international break coming up, but we feel it's necessary because of the events of the weekend and what was quite the capitulation at the Amex for Spurs against Brighton, and the fact that Watford's next game in the Premier League, searching for that elusive first win, is of course against Spurs. Now, we have said that it's the worst start to a Premier League season since 2006-07.
You don't need to repeat it.
I know, sorry, man. I'm building up. I shouldn't bring it up again, should I? It's bad. It is the worst big chance conversion rate as well in the Hornets this season. Sorry, mate. Which is quite interesting. It's 3 goals in 14 attempts, 21%. That is, again, why you're saying Troy Deeney does need to be back in this side, to be fair.
Yeah.
Because he will get those goals. But a team who didn't score any goals this week, as I just said, was Tottenham. Now, on the line now, we have Emma Story, sports writer and Spurs fan. Emma, what in the flaming Goliath happened at the Amex yesterday?
I have no answers. I have no words. I mean, I think I think it's fair to say that we've had some shockers this season so far, but yesterday really took us down a whole new level. I mean, from moment one, really, the team just looked a complete mess. I mean, you can make an argument that after Hugo obviously suffered such a terrible injury so early on that it kind of threw the players off their game. But I mean, there's no excuse for the lack of desire and commitment that was shown by those players on the pitch for Spurs yesterday. I mean, Brighton have never beaten us in the Premier League. I don't think they've actually beaten us since 1985. I think it was 85 or 86. Wow. And it shouldn't. Even in the kind of run of form that we're in, with the players that we have in our team and in our squad as a whole, there is absolutely no way that we should be losing in that fashion to a team like Brighton, with all due respect to them. I mean, I'm at a loss, as are many of my fellow Spurs fans, as to what the hell is going on at our club at the moment.
Hi there, Emma. Andy here. Well, we've lost 3-0 to Brighton, so join the club. It's a great club to be a part of. Obviously, a really poor performance and a defeat to go with it yesterday. Following on from that 7-2 humiliation against Bayern Munich earlier in the week, it wasn't quite 8, so you're not in that club just yet.
Small mercy.
Almost. Pochettino, he must be in a bit of trouble, is he not?
It's a really difficult question because I think most fans still feel that because of everything he's achieved with us so far, and because of the way he transformed our team, made us into top 4 regulars, made us Champions League finalists, the kind of form that people like me who grew up in the 80s and 90s never ever imagined we could see our team competing on that kind of level. I think a lot of fans still believe that he deserves the chance to try and turn this around. And I am firmly in that camp. I think the problem is that it does seem like a lot of the players have stopped playing for him at the moment. There seems to be something fundamentally wrong behind the scenes at the club, and I'm not sure how he goes about fixing that. I mean, when he first came in to Spurs, and they had a lot of the old players, the older members of the squad who were kind of causing a bit of trouble, the likes of Yunus Kabul, who were really unsettling things behind the scenes. And he came in and he got rid of them all. He banished them all through the team. He brought the younger players through, people like Ryan Mason and obviously Harry Kane. He gave them regular starting spots, and things kind of built from there. And you do start to increasingly get this feeling that the same thing needs to happen again. The difference being is that actually some of the players who we suspect may be the disruptive influences are actually some of the best players that we've had play for the club in recent years. And that's a big step to have to take to try and drop the likes of those and banish them to the reserves or to the bench. So it's a very difficult time at the moment because I think a lot of Tottenham fans feel torn between knowing that something has got to change, but also not wanting it to be the manager that changes, because I think we all feel that we owe him. He has given us so much. He deserves the chance to try and fix this. I'm just not sure how.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Emma, and it's difficult. It must be so frustrating to watch because we can all see, everybody can see that something is not quite right. And whether that's a rift in the camp, like you said, between those big players. We're hearing rumours about, Jan Vertonghen was left out at the start of the season. What was the reason for that? We're hearing Kieran Trippier sort of subtly put some lines in a few quotes when he joined Atletico. Apparently, Christian Eriksen wanted to move to La Liga. That was through no fault of Spurs, but apparently the move just didn't get through for whatever reason. So he's sort of run his course and is playing on empty in a sense. I mean, I don't think you rediscover your passion or desire for a club. I think he quite clearly wants to go and will probably either go in January, but it'll be difficult to let him go then, or go for a free. So it's really hard. And I think when you go all the way back to the Champions League final and the fact that Poch said, maybe if I win this, it's time to go. I think those quotes were quite telling. So is Poch's mind in the job at the moment? It's all very confusing.
Yeah, I mean, it's Poch is amazing. He's amazing and frustrating at the same time because he's most definitely one of the most honest managers that we have ever had, and he really does say how what he feels and how he feels, even if it's not necessarily the best idea. And those Champions League quotes you mentioned are actually a perfect example of that. And I guess we as fans and even as the media can't have it both ways. You can't want managers and players to be very honest about a situation but then at the same time castigate them if they say something that you think, oh, well, that's not going to help your team or help your club. I mean, I think the thing with Poch is that we always suspected there would be a little bit of a Champions League hangover because it was such a momentous effort to get there. It was so unprecedented. And then obviously the final itself was actually a bit of a letdown, really, and was kind of all over in the 3rd minute. And I was there, and it really felt like, you know, it was gone from the moment that ridiculous penalty got given against us. And there was always sorry, I'll let it go.
It still hurts. I know, it still hurts.
But you always felt that there was going to be a little bit of a hangover from that, because it's a lot to get over, and it's only a few months ago, really. But I think Poch has reaffirmed actually quite a few times in recent weeks his commitment to Tottenham, and he even came out this weekend before the Brighton game in his press conference to say that people are always asking about his future, and he hopes that in another 5 years they're still talking about another 5 years at Tottenham. I don't think there's much doubt that he wants to be here right now. However, I don't know, you know, he's always on the flip side said that if he felt like he'd lost the backing of the fans and the backing of the team, that he would walk. And I wonder if maybe he may start, if results continue the way that they're going, that he may start to feel that he's kind of on a hiding to nothing. And he puts so much of himself, so much passion and so much pain into his job as manager. I wonder how much of a toll this is now taking on him, emotionally and mentally as much as anything, and whether he's actually, not that he's not focused on Tottenham, but whether he's still got the energy, where he's got it in him to kind of turn this situation around, because it is really draining, and it is really, I can only imagine what it's like as a manager, because watching it as a fan, and this is essentially the same group of players who gave us such, incredible highs just a few months ago, playing Man City, playing Ajax, even getting to the Champions League final itself. It's hard to understand, and it's hard to process how it's fallen apart so fast, and how it's painful. It's really painful to see, and I can only imagine for him that must be 100 times worse than it is watching it as a fan.
And just very quickly, Emma, before you go, obviously you've got Watford next up, rock bottom, winless. A quick score prediction from yourself.
Oh my God! You know what? It's so tough, because actually usually we're the team that you want to play. If you need a win, or if you're on a terrible run, or if you've never beaten us before, now is the time to play us, because we'll clearly hand you the 3 points. I mean, on the plus side for us, we're at home, so I will go a very scrappy 2-1 win Tottenham, but I don't have much confidence.
Okay, Emma, I'm going to take your word for that one. That was Emma Story, sports writer and Spurs fan. Thank you for joining us. She has gone. She's already gone. That's the prediction, and she's done.
Done.
One from you, Matt. I know you're not going to be here when the game... Oh, no, you will be here.
I will be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just not here next week.
Okay, fine. And so a prediction from your fighter?
A point away from home against any Big Six side is good. A nervy 1-1.
Okay, lovely. A nervy 1-1. Enjoy yourself in Budapest next week, my friend.
Thank you very much.
I will be here with the Watford Fan Show next week on Love Sport. We'll see you at Sunday, 7 p.m.
This is Love Sport.
You all right, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah? Really? It's just, there's a massive